In Egypt, the Israelites multiplied greatly, filling the land with their presence. A new Pharaoh arose who did not remember Joseph. Seeing the Israelites' strength and numbers, he feared they might join Egypt's enemies in war. To suppress them, Pharaoh set taskmasters over them, forcing them into hard labor, building the cities of Pithom and Ramses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied. In anger, Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew sons to be thrown into the Nile, while daughters were to live. During this time, a man from the house of Levi took a Levite woman as his wife. She conceived and bore a son. Seeing that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she prepared a basket made of bulrushes, coated it with tar and pitch, and placed the child inside. She set it among the reeds along the riverbank. The child's sister stood at a distance to see what would happen. Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the bank. Seeing the basket among the reeds, she sent one of her maidens to fetch it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. She had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." The baby's sister approached and said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and the girl brought the child's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter said, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." The woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." Years passed, and Moses grew up in Pharaoh's house. One day, he went out to his people and saw their burdens. He witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. Looking around and seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day, he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He said to the one in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" The man replied, "Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses became afraid, for he realized the matter was known. When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. In Midian, he sat by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters, who came to draw water for their father's flock. Some shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. When they returned home, their father Reuel asked, "How is it that you have come so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us from the hand of the shepherds." Reuel told his daughters to invite him to eat bread. Moses consented to stay, and Reuel gave him his daughter Zipporah as wife. She bore a son, and he called his name Gershom, saying, "I have been a stranger in a foreign land." After many days, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned under slavery and cried out. Their cry came up to God. God heard their groaning, remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and took notice of them. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Moses said, "I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn." When the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." He answered, "Here I am." God said, "Do not draw near. Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses hid his face, afraid to look upon God. God told him that he had seen the affliction of his people in Egypt and would send Moses to deliver them. Moses hesitated, but God promised to be with him and gave him signs for proof. Thus began Moses's return to Egypt. Moses returned to Jethro and said, "Let me go, that I may return to my brethren in Egypt." Jethro told him, "Go in peace." The Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go, for all the men who sought your life are dead." Moses took his wife and sons, set them on a donkey, and returned to Egypt, carrying the staff of God in his hand. Aaron, his brother, met him at the mountain of God, and together they journeyed to confront Pharaoh. They gathered the elders of Israel, and Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses. The people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited them and seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh replied, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go." He accused the people of idleness and commanded the taskmasters to no longer provide straw for making bricks. The people were forced to gather straw themselves while still meeting the same quota. The Israelites blamed Moses and Aaron for their hardship. Moses turned to the Lord, questioning why evil had come upon the people, but the Lord answered that Pharaoh would soon let them go with a mighty hand. The Lord told Moses that he had made him like a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron would be his prophet. They went again before Pharaoh. Aaron cast down his staff, and it became a serpent. Pharaoh's magicians did the same with their enchantments, but Aaron's staff swallowed theirs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to listen. Then the plagues began. At the Nile, Moses struck the water with his staff, and all the waters turned to blood. Fish died, and the river stank. The magicians did the same by their arts, and Pharaoh's heart remained hard. 7 days later, frogs covered the land. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, asking them to entreat the Lord to remove the frogs, promising to let the people go. But when relief came, Pharaoh hardened his heart again. Then came the plague of gnats, followed by flies that filled Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh again pleaded for relief but broke his word. The 5th plague struck the livestock of Egypt, but none of Israel's cattle died. Boils followed, afflicting man and beast, and then a storm of hail destroyed crops and trees. Pharaoh confessed he had sinned and asked for the hail to stop. Yet when it ceased, he hardened his heart once more. Locusts came and devoured what remained after the hail. Darkness then covered Egypt for 3 days, yet Israel had light where they dwelled. Still Pharaoh refused to let them go. Finally, God declared that one last plague would fall, the death of the firstborn in every Egyptian household. The Israelites were instructed to take a lamb without blemish, slaughter it, and place its blood on their doorposts so that the destroyer would pass over them. They were to eat the lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. At midnight, the Lord struck all the firstborn in Egypt, from Pharaoh's firstborn to the firstborn of prisoners and cattle. A great cry rose throughout Egypt, for there was no house without one dead. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, "Rise, go out from among my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as you have said." The Egyptians urged them to leave quickly, fearing they would all die. The Israelites took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls bound in cloth, and departed with gold and silver given by the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot besides women and children. A mixed multitude went up with them, along with flocks and herds. They baked unleavened cakes from the dough they carried, for they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait. They journeyed according to the command of the Lord. God went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them and a pillar of fire by night to give them light. He did not remove the pillar from before them. The Lord spoke to Moses, instructing him to camp by the sea opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh's heart was hardened once again, and he pursued the Israelites with his army, his chariots, horsemen, and soldiers. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up and saw the Egyptians marching after them. They were greatly afraid and cried out to the Lord. Moses said to them, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show you today." The Lord told Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea. The angel of God, who went before Israel, moved behind them, and a pillar of cloud stood between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, bringing darkness to one side and light to the other. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the waters to go back by a strong east wind all that night, turning the sea into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, with walls of water on their right and left. The Egyptians pursued, all Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen following after them. During the morning watch, the Lord looked down upon the Egyptian army through the pillar of fire and cloud and threw them into confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off, so that they drove them with difficulty. The Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians." Moses stretched out his hand, and the sea returned to its strength. As the Egyptians fled toward it, the Lord overthrew them in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots, horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them remained. But the Israelites walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, the waters forming a wall on either side. On that day, the Lord saved Israel out of the hand of the Egyptians, and they saw the Egyptians dead upon the shore. The people feared the Lord and believed in him and in his servant Moses. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang a song to the Lord, saying that he had triumphed gloriously, that horse and rider were thrown into the sea. Moses led Israel from the Red Sea into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water, for it was bitter. The people complained, but Moses cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. He cast it into the water, and it became sweet. From there, they came to Elim, where 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees were found, and they camped there by the waters. Thus ended the deliverance of Israel from Egypt. Pharaoh's power was broken, and the people whom he once enslaved walked free across the wilderness under the guidance of the God who had called Moses from the burning bush.